You know, the last episode, Fantasy Chaos and the John Morant mess, felt like therapy for every one of us who drafted with our hearts instead of our heads. I'm still nursing a couple of fantasy bruises from that one. But hey, that's the beauty of hoops, right? It gives you both the math and the mess. We went deep on how one player's decisions ripple through an entire ecosystem, from locker rooms to leaderboards. And if you missed that conversation, go back and check it out. It's not just fantasy talk, it's about accountability, choices, and the way we sometimes try to separate the player from the person when we really shouldn't. But this week, we're bringing it back to the floor, back to the games, the grind, and the stories that had unfolded from October 28th through November 4th. A full week of basketball therapy. From the Sixers' comeback to the Raptors' reigning threes. From grit to grace. This one's all about perspective. Every team's got a story, every box score hides a heartbeat, and we're here to find out both. So grab your coffee, pull up your stat sheet, and let's do what we do. Turn the noise of the NBA into something that hits a little deeper. But before we do that, today's episode around Ball Rants is brought to you by W.GG. It's DUBBY.GG. The clean energy drink for hoop heads, like yourself, who run on late nights and long debates. No sugar, no crash, just focus and bounce. Use promo code ROUNDBALLRANTS at checkout to get 10% off and help support the show. Again, that's W.GG. Promo code ROUNDBALLRANTS. Now jumping into our week in review, first up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers 139 at the Washington Wizards 134 in overtime, October 28th, 2025. There's a kind of magic in games that refuse to die. Philly looked to cook midway through the third, down 19. The air sucked right out of the building. You could see frustration in body language, hear it in the crowd. But then, Tyrese Maxey, the heartbeat of that team, decided to rewrite the story. He went off for 39 points and 10 assists, slicing through defenders like it was a personal vendetta. Every shot he hit felt like he was exhaling all the tension out of the arena. The Sixers clawed back, forced overtime, and finished what looked impossible just an hour earlier. And that's the beauty of a comeback. It's not just about the scoreboard, it's about spirit. Sometimes you're the one down 19, not in the game, but in life. You've had bad breaks, people counting you out, maybe you've counted yourself out. But then you hit that one shot, take that one step, and suddenly you remember you're still in it. The Sixers showed us that kind of heart, that kind of bounce. That's why this one wasn't just a win, it was a message. Next up, we have the Dallas Mavericks 107, Indiana Pacers 105, played on October 29th, 2025. Dallas and Indiana gave us one of those quiet classics, the kind of game that doesn't trend but stays with you. Both teams traded blows but never blinked. It was execution over ego, poise over panic. Brandon Williams came off the bench and poured in 20 unexpected points, while Dwight Powell anchored the middle, doing all the invisible work that keeps a team's foundation solid. When it mattered most, Dallas didn't flinch. They got the stops, they moved the ball, they made just enough free throws to walk out alive, 107 to 105. It's easy to obsess over stars and stats, but sometimes the heroes are the guys who know their job and do it without the noise. That's what this game was, a blueprint for patience. Life's a lot like that, isn't it? We think we need fireworks to make progress, but really it's just the grind, the quiet choices that build stability. The Mavs didn't dazzle, they just delivered. And that kind of discipline, that's a real win. Minnesota Timberwolves 122, Charlotte Hornets 105, November 1st, 2025. Minnesota started this one sleepwalking, a little careless, a little too cool. Charlotte punched first and looked confident. But halftime rolled around, and the Wolves found something. Call it rhythm, call it focus, call it pride. Their ball movement sharpened, their pace smothered out, and suddenly every possession looked like a symphony. By the end of the third, the Hornets were chasing air. The final score, 122-105. It doesn't tell the story of the shift, that internal switch that great teams can flip when the moment calls for it. And that switch, it's growth. In basketball and beyond, you realize you can't control the start, but you can always own the response. The Wolves adjusted instead of panicking. They steadied their breathing, trusted the game plan, and let momentum find them. In your own life, that's the reminder. You don't have to dominate from the tip, you just have to evolve when things get shaky. That's maturity in motion. Houston Rockets, 128. Boston Celtics, 101. November 1st, 2025. From the opening tip, Houston looked like a team that had already read the ending. The ball zipped, the shots fell, and the Celtics were stuck playing catch-up to an opponent 3 steps ahead. The Rockets weren't just hot, they were prepared. Every possession felt intentional, like they knew exactly what Boston would do before it happened. By halftime, the tone was set, and the lead kept ballooning. What made it special wasn't the score, it was the control. This wasn't luck, it was work showing up on the scoreboard. You could feel the confidence of a group that trusts its preparation. In life, that's what practice does. It makes the hard stuff look effortless. The Rockets' rhythm didn't come from talent alone, it came from repetition, from accountability, and from belief in one another. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is quiet execution. Charlotte Hornets 126, Utah Jazz 103. Played November 2nd, 2025. The Hornets didn't waste a second. They dropped 39 in the first quarter and then never looked back. Every drive had intent, every pass had pace, and Utah just couldn't match their energy. But what impressed me most was the maturity. Charlotte didn't start celebrating at halftime, they just kept grinding. You could sense a shift in their mindset. They weren't just playing to win, they were playing to finish. And that's a life lesson right there, staying humble when you're ahead. Anyone can find focus when they're struggling. Real growth shows up when things are going right. Charlotte stayed locked in. No theatrics, just professionalism. They walked out 126-103, but more importantly, they left with identity. It's that quiet kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Detroit Pistons 114, Memphis Grizzlies 106. Played November 3rd, 2025. Detroit's young core is starting to show signs of real cohesion. They came out with energy, hit the paint hard, and built a cushion early. Then came Memphis, that scrappy, never say die Memphis energy. And suddenly the Pistons were tested. The lead shrank. The crowd tightened up, but Detroit didn't crumble. They recalibrated. They slowed it down, got back to the fundamentals, and closed it out, 114-106. That's the kind of win that you can build your culture on. Learning to hold a lead isn't glamorous. It's nerve management. Detroit's growing up right in front of us, learning what composure feels like in real time. And isn't that what adulthood is? You stop seeking control over everything and start trusting yourself to handle whatever comes. The Pistons did just that. And the result was more than a win, it was a step forward. Los Angeles Lakers 123, Portland Trailblazers 115. Played November 3rd, 2025. Portland came out hungry, pushing tempo, crashing boards, testing LA's patience. But the Lakers never flinched. Every time the Blazers made a run, LA responded with composure. That's what experience looks like. They didn't chase the game, they guided it. By the fourth quarter, that calm turned into a cushion and the final score, 123-115. It was a reflection of their maturity as much as their talent. There's something therapeutic about watching a team stay poised under pressure. It reminds you that panic never helps, presence does. The Lakers didn't rush, they didn't force, they trusted their reads, trusted each other. It's the same in life. You can't control the chaos, but you can decide how you carry it. And when you do, you start playing life at your own pace, like LA did right here. Toronto Raptors 128, Milwaukee Bucks 100. Played November 4th, 2025. 17 threes. That's not basketball. That's a statement. Toronto played like a team that already knew who they were. The ball moved like music. The defense talked. The crowd fed off of every bucket. Milwaukee tried to adjust, but by the second quarter, the Raptors had burned the script. Not just a blowout, but a blueprint. What stood out most wasn't the score, but the synergy. Every cut, every rotation, it felt connected. You could sense trust radiating through the floor. That's the stuff that doesn't show up in a box score. Chemistry, belief, rhythm. And that's a parallel to real life as well. When one person finds confidence, it can be contagious. The Raptors didn't just play well, they played together. That's a sermon disguised as a box score. Atlanta Hawks 127, Orlando Magic 112. Played November 4th, 2025. Some wins are made of moments. Others are made of consistency. Atlanta's was the latter. They scored 32, and 34 through the first 3 quarters. Nothing flashy, just unrelenting execution. The Magic made a few runs, but the Hawks' pace and rhythm never broke. It's the kind of game that coaches love because it's proof that discipline beats adrenaline every time. Watching it felt like a meditation on routine. Atlanta didn't need a spark. They were the spark. They built trust through repetition. That's life in its purest form. Steady work, quiet confidence, sustainable success. No viral highlights, no emotional roller coaster, just doing your job and doing it well. That's how you build something that lasts, possession by possession, day by day. Golden State Warriors 98, Los Angeles Clippers 79, played October 28th, 2025. This wasn't the high-octane Warriors we've come to expect. This was something quieter, tougher, older. They won this one on defense, communication, rotations, effort. All those things that don't trend, but they win titles. Holding the Clippers to 79 points in 2025 is like finding a working payphone. It's unheard of. 98-79, and not once did they let the energy drip. Sometimes, growth means rediscovering your roots. Golden State reminded everyone that defense isn't just about effort, it's about connection, it's about trust, about showing up for the guy next to you. The Warriors didn't need the fireworks because they had faith in their foundation, and that's what makes this one poetic. It's not just a win, it's a return to identity. Before we dive into this week's bumps and bruises, let's talk about the bigger picture. This season didn't open up full strength. From the moment training camps broke, half the league stars were rehabbing something. And that shaped everything from rotations to storyline. You can't talk early season basketball without talking about their absence. We've seen some familiar names still out. Ja Morant finishing his suspension and recovery window. Zion Williamson dealing with conditioning and hamstring issues. And veterans like Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard taking managed workloads. Then you've got the lingering injuries. Karl Anthony Towns' quad strain, Brandon Ingram's sore foot, LaMelo Bell's lingering ankle. These aren't side notes. They're steering the direction of entire franchises. Every year we say the same thing. Health is everything. But so far in the 2025-26 season, it's made it literal. The rhythm of this season has been less about highlight reels and more about who's available to even make one. The game's cruel like that sometimes. It doesn't wait for you to heal. You either adapt or you get passed by. So let's narrow down the focus in our week in review window, a stretch that saw fresh bruises, cautious minutes, and some scary moments that thankfully looked worse than they were. Karl Anthony Towns, as mentioned, was held out with that quad issue, missing the front end of the week and testing the Wolves' front court depth. His absence forced more minutes for Naz Reid and open touches that Minnesota used wisely in that 122-105 win over Charlotte. In Indiana, the Pacers' injury list keeps growing. Multiple rotation guys, including their backup guard core, appeared on the report, a theme that's starting to test Rick Carlisle's rotations. A team built on pace and cohesion can't find either when half the roster is in therapy boots. Al Horford, now anchoring Golden State's second unit, sat out in the November 4th matchup against Phoenix with a left toe injury. And when you remove that kind of veteran presence, it doesn't just change your stat line, it changes your voice. The Warriors still handled business defensively, but you could see the difference in their spacing and decision-making without Horford's half-court IQ. Elsewhere, Tyrese Halliburton's Achilles injury continues to linger over Indiana like a cloud. Indiana's overall health is the reason it's struggling early in this season, but knowing your star won't be returning anytime soon either, that makes this grind all the more tougher. And out west, the Clippers' injury list grew again, heading into their November 4th game with Oklahoma City. Rotation pieces banged up, questionable tags up and down the roster. It's early, but you can already tell who's built for the marathon and who's fighting just to make the next tip-off. And what do these injuries mean beyond the headlines? They remind us that success in the NBA isn't always about talent, it's about endurance. You can't measure chemistry when half your lineup's on the bench, but you can measure resilience. In life, just like the league, you get tested not when everything's perfect, but when everything hurts. These players will heal, rosters will adjust, but the lesson sticks. Availability is still the greatest ability. So as we roll into November, keep your eye not just on the box scores, but on the bodies behind them. Every limp, every taped ankle, it tells a story. And as we'll see in our next segment, sometimes, the stars who step in for the injured are the ones who can change the season. If you're listening on YouTube and you've made it this far, please hit that like button, subscribe, maybe comment, and give me your take on what injuries have affected your team this season. You know, every time injuries pile up, somebody out there starts scribbling down the word rebuild. But that's not what the league really is. It's a cycle. One player goes down, another steps in. One star's minutes vanish, and a rookie or a role guy sees the light for the first time. That's what makes basketball so human. The bounce never stops, it just changes hands. And right now, while a lot of teams are patching lineups and praying for quick recoveries, a handful of players are quietly thriving in the chaos. Guys who didn't headline media day are suddenly putting up numbers that make you do a double take when the box score drops at midnight. They're rewriting their own scouting reports. One rebound, one extra assist, one surprise jumper at a time. So let's take 5 minutes for 5 names. 5 players who've earned the spotlight through hustle, rhythm, and a little bit of luck. Because in this league, opportunity doesn't knock, it demands. And first up, we have Amen Thompson, averaging 15 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game, 5.8 assists per game this season. Houston almost handed Amen the keys this year, but now with Kevin Durant driving and taking the brunt of the attention, Amen is already showing growth. With about 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. He's become more than just a role player, he's a connector. Just prior to our week of review, he turned in an 18-point, 9 rebound, 7 assist outing and a win, a clear sign that the jump in responsibility is real. What makes this feel like a breakout? When Thompson drives the offense, instead of just riding it, he changes the look of the Rockets. Instead of being the young gun, he's becoming a guy who makes the others better. It's a bounce moment that we talk about, when you stop following footsteps and you start leaving your own. Up next, we have Alperen Sengun, averaging roughly 22.2 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, and 7 assists per game this season. Sengun's leap feels explosive. Numbers like 22, 8, and 7 are massive for a big man handling more of the offense, and his per-game growth is obvious. He dropped 26 points, 11 boards, and 6 assists in a key November 3rd win over the Mavericks. One of those moments where you realize he isn't just good, he's essential. Here's why it matters. The league is shifting to a positionless pace, and Sengun is thriving there. More touches, more creation. That means consequences for defenses and value for fantasy boards. For young viewers, he represents the next wave of the bigs who do everything, not just dunk everything. Next up, we have Deni Avdija. Projected 22.7 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and a 4.2 assists per game this season. Avdija has been creeping up into guys to know territory, and the stat line says why. Around 22 points a game is no longer a breakout whisper, it's a statement. While I couldn't find a flag game in the October 28th to November 4th window is specifically listed, his upward trend in points and minutes on the Portland roster shows that he's earning the role. Avdija is the Swiss Army wing that can defend, can score, can pass, and when teams are banged up, those players get the spotlight. In a week of injuries and shifting lineups, he's one of those guys who can stand up and says, "Put me in." That's the kind of bounce moment we love. Then we have Kelly Oubre Jr., averaging 17.6 points per game and 7 rebounds a game this season. Oubre Jr.'s early season rebirth is showing up just in the numbers. He's evolving into a go-to wing rather than the spot contributor he used to be. While I didn't find a specific late October, early November breakout headline for him, his projection and role shift make him a strong developmental story. Bounce-back players are gold in these cycles. When someone who's been overlooked suddenly gets a new role and delivers, it creates that feel-good arc our audience loves. Watching him now could pay dividends for both fantasy and storytelling alike. Lastly, we have Josh Giddey, trending toward a 28-8 usage window this season. Giddey is the kind of player whose stat line alone isn't surprising, but the consistency of it is. When projections towards the 28-8 mark, he's being asked to run more than he used to. As one early season preview put it, intriguing players to watch in 2025 and 26 included him. When roles open up because stars are injured or resting, Giddey's the type to fill the gap, create, distribute, and score. He might not be lighting up the highlight reel yet, but his floor is rising, and that's exactly where that bounce happens. You know, when you really look at the past week in the NBA, all the injuries, the unexpected heroes, the comebacks, the chemistry tests, what you're really seeing is the art of surviving the slump. Everybody hits one. Teams hit them, players hit them, we all hit them. It's never convenient, it's never pretty, and it always feels longer than it actually is. But it's in that chaos where our character starts whispering. The Sixers down 19 and refusing to fold, the Pistons learning how to hold a lead instead of lose one, the Hornets not just winning but finishing. Those moments, they're little reminders that rhythm isn't something that you can find and keep forever, something you rebuild again and again, after every missed shot, every bad bounce, every setback that makes you want to pack it in. And maybe that's the bigger lesson this week. Basketball doesn't just reward talent, it rewards the endurance. The players who heal, the teams that adapt, the fans that stay tuned in when things look rough. That's the same kind of resilience we all need, on and off the court. The truth is, we don't always get to control the scoreboard, or who's in our lineup, or how the next quarter looks. But we can always control how we respond. So if you're going through your own version of a shooting slump, take a breath, reset, and keep moving. Because like the league always reminds us, the bounce never leaves. It just waits for you to find your rhythm again. This has been Ball Rants. I'm Vincent Cooper, and as always, It's not just basketball, it's therapy with a bounce.